Thank you all for joining the discussion today on DLP incident management and endpoint DLP. The first portion will be going through the incident management part of the webinar, and then Erika, my colleague, will be going through some of the endpoint DLP FAQs, commonly asked questions. So we have both of these topics planned for today. So we'll start off with the guidance for investigating Microsoft Purview data loss prevention incidents. My name is Shivani Mahapatro. I'm a senior product manager on the data loss prevention team. And John Nordstrom, my colleague, is here to join us as well, and will be doing a live demo. The topics we're planning to cover is around the recommended guidance and the key benefits of Microsoft 365 Defender and Microsoft Sentinel for incident management. We will be providing a quick step-by-step walkthrough of the data loss prevention incident management in the Defender experience. And then we have a few resources to share with you, and we're happy to answer your questions and answers that will be coming in through the chat. So our recommended guidance is that Microsoft Purview data loss prevention, the team recommends using the Defender experience for DLP alert investigations. If you're currently using the Microsoft Purview compliance portal for DLP investigations, we recommend investigating DLP in the Defender incident queue for an enhanced experience. For the advanced incident management needs, such as reporting and automated workflows, Sentinel can be used. This, however, requires custom expertise to create playbooks and custom reports. So as an analyst or investigator for DLP investigations, you can perform exhaustive investigations in both the Defender portal and the Microsoft Sentinel portals. Sentinel provides built-in as well as custom capabilities to tailor to more advanced scenarios, but we highly recommend exploring the Defender experience if you haven't already done so. Some of the key benefits of using the Microsoft 365 Defender portal experience is that there is an improved triaging experience, which includes multiple features such as tagging the incidents, filtering, and taking bulk actions on the incident queue. There is a tool also called Advanced Hunting that provides the ability to query the raw compliance and security audit data to proactively detect the risks in your organization. And there's also reporting capabilities that allow you to visualize the attack chain using this tool. The unified dashboard with a single incident queue in the Defender experience allows your SOC and DLP team to view all your DLP alerts in one single incident queue. There's also intelligent correlations that are available within the product that provide intra-solution DLP to DLP correlations under a single incident and inter-solution correlations between security as well, such as Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and Microsoft Defender for Office. Alerts can be also correlated with the DLP alerts and incidents for a more enhanced experience to investigate your DLP alerts. Filtering options include several pivots, such as the service source. So even if the unified queue has alerts from multiple different sources, such as Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and DLP, you can filter the queue to look at just DLP incidents. You can filter by date range, incident status, the DLP policy name through search capability, end user, and there's multiple more filtering options that you can explore on the Defender portal. There is also the ability to filter the incident queue by the custom tags you may have applied on the incidents while triaging your alerts and incidents. There is built-in remediation actions on the users, files, and devices, such as labeling files, removing violating emails, or even resetting user account credentials if they have been compromised. These built-in remediation actions are available from the Defender portal itself. The key benefits of Microsoft Sentinel is that Sentinel provides a single pane of glass with the ability to pull in signals from several first-party sources, leveraging native connectors, such as the Microsoft Defender connector, which is a one-click connector that pushes the DLP alerts and other incidents into Microsoft Sentinel directly. And Sentinel also provides the ability to pull in third-party signals, such as from Google, AWS, for a more enhanced investigation and remediation in Sentinel. You can use custom analytic rules to create alerts based on data from these various signals and systems. And workbooks can be used to create reports, and the reports can be used in your business to measure KPIs. And there's several other automation workflows for incident management that can be used in the Sentinel experience as well, such as collecting evidence, initiating content searches, or setting up integration with third-party systems. The prerequisites for investigating DLP alerts and incidents in Defender is the following. You will need one of the licenses that is listed here on this slide. And please note that once you're licensed and eligible for this feature for incidents to flow into the Microsoft Defender portal, the DLP alerts will automatically flow once you have these licenses. So a reminder, though, to make sure that you see the alerts and incidents in the Defender queue, you should ensure that your policies have the alerts feature turned on in the compliance portal. And we have a link here, and I'll drop that in the chat as well for the purposes of investigating your alerts in Defender. You should ensure these alerts are turned on, and then also the appropriate permissions are assigned so that your analysts and investigators can view these alerts and incidents in the Defender queue. So now I'll be handing it over to John Nordstrom, who will be doing a quick live demo of the Defender experience for investigating DLP incidents.
Thanks, Shivani. Let's start a live demo. Need to select the right screen for sharing. So as an analyst or investigator, you can start off in the Defender portal. And in this case, you will go into Incidents and Alerts and select the Incident node. So that's the right approach for anyone. So start your investigation in the Incidents node of Incidents and Alerts, because it will allow you to do more rich investigations. It will also allow you to get this experience where you get grouping and other things enabled. New things, if you're looking at this experience compared to the Purview experience, is that we have filtering and other things available that makes the whole experience easier. Right now, the filtering may seem a bit well, short of filters for some of the DLP investigations you're making, but we are working on adding more filtering based on policies, rules, sensitive info types, and that kind of detail that is important for a DLP analyst or investigator. At the moment, we can, for example, select the DLP only type. We can select any tags we may have had, so if it's an investigation type phase or if it's part of the remediation actions we are sending out and you have tagged it for that, you can make that kind of filtering. When we look at the entities, this can be the name of the individual you're investigating to see if there are any other cases open for this specific entity. We can then select different sensitivity types that are around these incidents. But let's start with this one first. So like I said, we are improving the filtering. It will become better, but this is the current experience. So when I set this filter up, you can quickly see the number of incidents I've had for this user. Another thing that is important to view in this case is that you can actually have up to 6 months of data being shown. In the past, you can only do it for 30 days. So that's another great improvement you're getting when you're using the Defender experience. Another thing in this case is that you can also select to search for names and get something based on the identity of an incident. So if I search for financial in this case, I will quickly see the different incidents that are available for me with that subject. Right. So let's go to the credit card financial data incident in this case. We start in the attack story. So when you get to the attack story, select the current active alert. As you can see in the mid screen, you have the email, the subject of the email, and you have the user who sent the email. Below, when I clicked on the active alert, I'm also getting the DLP event. In many cases, you may start off with the DLP event. So you click the DLP event. In the DLP event, you will find all the details. So was exchanged in this case that where this incident was triggered. You can see that you had a response to a request in the email subject. You see the sender, the recipient. If you want to get more information, you can actually hover over the sender as well. So if you can see contact details, manager, department, and other things when you hover over that user. In this case, it was the DLP policy that was called financial data credit card that matched, and you can see the rule matching. We see the sensitive info type, so it was 12 credit card numbers in this case. The action taken, so in many cases when you have a blocked access and the user has been notified and other things, you may actually just go ahead and close this case. But since we are doing this as an exercise just to look at the data, we will continue as an analyst. If the user was overriding something, you will get the justification and the policy, yes, it was overridden as part of this piece. Another key thing you may be looking at is, all right, where was the information detected? In this case, the message body. If it is an attachment, the name of that attachment will show up. And again, the number of credit card matches and the conditions. So in this case, it was shared externally, and that's why it triggered. Another part of this, of course, is the next step is that you will go through and look at the source. If you want to look at this is the data with the surrounding text. So you can see that, yep, someone was sending this information. It really seems to be some personal data, and we can see some credit card numbers out here. If you want to see the entire message, you can also download the email, and that allows you to access more properties of the email itself. You can also move ahead in this case and look at, okay, what's the sensitive info types? If I only want to see those, I don't care about anything else, I can see these are the credit card numbers. If I look at the contextual summary, I will see the contextual summary of the credit card numbers with the text surrounding it. You can see I was lazy and did a copy paste, so some of this was not formatted perfectly. Based on this information, I can go to actions, and in this case, well, I can say it was a false positive, or I can download the email. If this was a SharePoint incident, I can stop sharing. I can also download it if it was containing some encrypted content. I can take a number of other actions on that type of content. So it's important to take a look at the actions you have available to you. when you are working through an incident. Let's move from kind of the investigation or analyst phase. As a next stage, you may wonder, okay, this user, is there anything else I need to know about this user? Has he been doing anything else that may raise the risk surrounding the user? Because of the integration we have with MDA and Azure AD, we can quickly see that, well, it actually has a decent size risk from Azure Identity. The user also has a high priority investigation risk when it comes to all up threats from the Defender for Cloud side of the house. So this may start to raise some concern around this user. Some really great things we have integrated in this case as well is that you can confirm the user is compromised, and it will go through the security motion, which of course is separate to the compliance motion that is focused on in this case. You can see there are quite a few options available. One thing that I know analysts will love is, of course, the governance, if you have some governance pieces, but also view owned files. So if you're working on, for example, SharePoint, and are working with files in SharePoint, I know the analysts would like to go here, have a quick look at the files that have been shared, and this is actually a great feature that shows some of the value you're getting out of the integration in between DLP, the Defender portal, and also Defender for Cloud. So, for example, if I go to this file, this recording, you can quickly see that there are collaborators in this case. And if I click this link, I will actually see the collaborators. So if I have external links, if I have something internal, you will quickly be able to assess that type of data for a SharePoint incident. Now, we don't have time to look at a bunch of different incidents, but I think these types of integration is really important for you to just go in there, look at it, and learn, and see how it can be used as part of your analyst flow. Another part in this graph view is that we can also select email, and we can get some email message details. In this case, so mostly the typical things that you can get from the system. In this case, we may move on, and perhaps you want to get more evidence and perhaps take another response to this email. So we select the email itself. You can see the person again being the recipient because it was dropped because it was part of transport. No surprise there. We actually saw it was blocked in as part of the alert as well. Like Shivani called out, a great piece of integration we have in the Defender portal is also the hunting experience. So if I go hunt, can in this case get the message from someone with the subject of response to request. And if I run this advanced hunting query, I now see the flow and other things that have been kicking in this case. But this is the actual email from the person. So let's take this one. Well, it must be screen resolution. So what you can do in this case is you can take the emails. If this was a real email and you know it's been delivered and all that kind of stuff, but you think, well, I don't want to have this email stuck on the end user's mailbox. You can actually take actions from advanced hunting and go to advanced hunting, delete the emails, and select hard delete. So this means that you can actually hard delete the email from the end user's mailbox. Of course, it will depend on your retention settings and other things, how it will be kept. But if you go through this motion, you can remove this email item, move it somewhere else, just to kind of prevent that type of data lying around on the user's mailbox. Other cool things with advanced hunting is that you can, for example, go to, let's say Adele in this case. So if we think Adele has been the person violating a bunch of policies, if we run this query, and this is a type of advanced hunting query we will share with you. It may not come directly after this call, but we are working on a blog post where we will share these queries with you in that post. We will also work on making the integration of these queries easier, so you can directly from a SharePoint case run a query like this, for example, where you get all the incidents that you have had for SharePoint and Endpoint and everything else. You can see in this case, you have a bunch of OneDrive incident caused by this user. You also see the endpoint policies being triggered. In this case, she's been uploading information to Boxcom. You can see the file uploaded to cloud operation. If she had shared with anyone external in this case, or recently, we would have seen the people that were targeted for that external sharing. We may want to go deeper. So why is she sharing this type of sensitive information? What's actually happening on her endpoints, and how many endpoints are used by Adele? If I go to Adele device, so this will be another query you will be able to run. And we run the query, we will actually see immediately the type of access happening on her endpoints. You can see Edge accessing sensitive information types that she has. So it's financial data, credit card numbers, other things using this device. Is expand, we can also see, of course, the document names and other things, the location of from where she's doing it, the count of that type of sensitive information type in that specific content data. So all of these really great things are available for you today. Of course, we want to make it simpler. So we will, like I said, give you all these queries so you can start hunting on your own, but also make the integration in between the incident experience and advanced hunting more seamless. So when you click Go Hunt, we should actually run these queries for you. We shouldn't have you run them manually. Okay, based on what we've seen in this case, we may want to set something up with this one. It's already assigned to myself. This is something you will have to do when you are setting up the incident, or when you are, the first step may be that you assign it to yourself. We may say in this case that, yeah, we have done the initial review. We have run through the first investigation as well of this one. So it's been part of the investigation process. We have made a bunch of other things. We can then set the status in progress. We can do a classification. If sure, these classifications aren't perfect, but it can really help you anyway, so you know if it's something that is malicious or something that is bad based on your classification, and add a comment. Let me save this. Other benefits you're getting from using the Defender experience over what we have had in the old one is that you can do multi-select as well. So you can select a number of incidents and take actions. So if you want to close them all, you can do that as well. Other things is that if you select at the top, you can select everything, and you will be able to get it for the past 60 days, like we looked at. I think that's the run through. It wasn't super quick, but hopefully good enough for you to get a taste and want to test more on your own and see how this works. Shivani, did I miss anything?
No, I think this was a good overview. I think there's some questions in the Q&A around filters, so you walked through that. But I think maybe if you can just quickly go through some more details on filtering, that would be great.
Yeah, so right now with the filtering, we have the Microsoft Data Loss Prevention. In this case, when we use the tagging, we will be able to use tags as well as part of the filter. They haven't been indexed yet, but you will be able to use the tags as well. You will have the different categories and entities that you can select. I think the key thing here is that we are missing things like the rules, we are missing the policies, and we are missing some more filters around sensitive info types that we are working on at the moment to integrate into the filtering experience in Defender. So we are actually actively working on improving this experience as well to make it easier for analysts and investigators in this case.
Yeah, as John mentioned, a few of the filters that we have in our roadmap that we have planned is the DLP policy, DLP policy rule, workload, the DLP actions. There's also been, a lot of requests coming in from customers on the sensitive info type or the label classification as well. So these enriched filters are on our roadmap.
Excellent. And so we know this is a big portion of your work as well. So you may have had one rule that is just firing a whole lot in a single day because someone is doing something or a number of people is doing something, or you have set up a new rule and you haven't kind of turned off the alerting for that rule when you tested it, and you have to close a bunch of rules. In those cases, it's very good to have these filters in place to make sure you can close them. But as I showed you, I think a key piece when it comes to closing a lot of incidents is also that when I select many incidents at the same time, I can do that without having to scroll through different pages. As you can see, they're all selected when I select something, and I can take the action directly on the incidents. So I think that's important. Other things you can do is based on the filtering. Once we get the rules, etc., right, we can do exports and other things. Right now, if you want to do filtering and other things based on the actual data, you should use the Activity Explorer for that kind of filtering. I understand that filtering is different because it's not based on the analyst or investigator view. It's based on the actual alerting view. That's why we want to fix this experience as well and make it much better for you. So that's it for me. I will have a look at the question queue as well.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I will proceed with this next section of the presentation. Thank you to everyone joining us today. We are eager to help you all have more confidence in Endpoint DLP deployments. My name is Erika. I'm a product manager working closely with Endpoint DLP, and today I'll be walking you through some of the most common questions on endpoints. Before jumping into the content, I wanted to review what I'll be covering during this next portion of the presentation. So this blog that you see in your screen is something we published some months ago, and I wanted to make sure we covered what's on the blog because the team wants you to have all the information and tools that we have in place available for you to help debug your Endpoint DLP setup. We wanted to bring together some of the common questions we've been hearing from customers, and we put it together in this blog. So I think this link that you see here on the left is clickable. So you can go ahead and see it on your own screen and follow with me, since I'll be covering some of the content that's here in the actual blog. If you ever have any questions regarding Endpoint DLP, the idea is for you to have access to this article where you can take a look at the questions, which are categorized, and then be able to help yourself and follow the right guidance with the links provided in the blog. Today's agenda. First, we'll be covering licensing and supported platforms, which tells us about license requirements, OS versions, and browsers supported by Endpoint DLP. Then we'll cover policy evaluation and enforcement. This section contains all types of common questions related to DLP policies. It explains exactly how policy evaluation works on Endpoint DLP. Third, I will walk you through policy features for Endpoint DLP. And we'll have the last section for troubleshooting the Endpoint DLP setup. If you have any additional questions in mind, apart from the ones I'll be referring to, or if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type them in the chat and we'll make sure to answer them as we go through the presentation. If we're short in time, I know this is recorded, so I will try to address them through our channel after the call. So jumping into the first section for licensing and supported platforms. One common question we received was, which browsers are supported for blocking the upload of sensitive files to cloud apps? So for Windows devices, it's important to note that blocking access and upload of sensitive files to cloud apps is supported on Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, through the Microsoft Purview Chrome extension, and Firefox, which is coming soon. Non-Microsoft browsers can be blocked from accessing sensitive files while enabling normal activity or non-sensitive files. And for Mac OS devices, in addition to the browsers that I just listed above, Endpoint DLP also supports Safari. So what happens if a group membership changes for a distribution group scoped into an endpoint? I wanted to note this additional. So after modifying a user group, users are added or removed from groups scoped to Endpoint DLP policies. So after this change has occurred, it takes approximately 24 hours for that change to come into the scope of the DLP policy. Jumping into the second question, does Endpoint DLP work on non-Windows devices? So some of the supported versions are Windows 10 for at least Enterprise 1809, the 3 latest versions of Mac OS, and we are evaluating expanding the support for Linux and mobile platforms. Jumping into policy evaluation and enforcement. So this is what I touched on earlier. When we have a group membership change for a distribution group scoped into an Endpoint DLP policy, remember there is a time frame of approximately 24 hours for this change to come into the scope of the DLP policy. Can Endpoint DLP work when a device is offline and not connected? So it's important to know that if a device is offline, the existing policy will continue to be enforced on those existing files. If a new file is created when the device is offline, scanning and protection won't be enforced until the device has internet connection. So this means that if DLP policy is updated or changed while a device is offline, the device won't receive the updated policy until the device has Wi-Fi connectivity. Jumping into some questions received regarding to features for Endpoint DLP, policy features for Endpoint DLP. One question is, does Endpoint DLP work on protected files that have a sensitivity label and protection settings? The answer for this question is that Endpoint DLP does not decrypt protected files to scan for sensitive content, or encrypted files, we could say. If the DLP policies are based on the detection of sensitive information types, encrypted files will not be inspected. However, you can define policies to use sensitivity labels, such as confidential, as a condition or use the attachment is password protection condition to enforce specific restrictions on password protected files. Another question we've received is, does Endpoint DLP inspect files in all locations on the endpoint device? The answer is yes. Endpoint DLP will inspect all files locally stored on the device. However, you also have the flexibility to define file paths to be excluded from Endpoint DLP inspection and policy enforcement. These settings are available in the data loss prevention settings of the Microsoft Purview compliance portal under global settings. And lastly, I wanted to go through some of our troubleshooting guides. Again, you can refer back to the blog with the links, public documentation, and more detailed guidance to specific scenarios you might be encountering. The first question is, how can I verify if my endpoint DLP setup is healthy? First, make sure your device meets the onboarding prerequisites. You can set up the right prerequisites by following the steps above. The steps below. So for Windows devices, make sure you're using the right Windows version, have enabled RTP, BM, and using the right Microsoft Edge browser. If you follow the links that I have here on the screen or the ones on the blog, it'll take you to the public documentation that we have available with the guidance and the most updated versions for each. For macOS devices, same thing, make sure you're using the supported OS. If not, you will see unhealthy in your configuration portal. So just making sure you have installed accessibility, full disk access, network filter, system extensions, and package version. Same using the Microsoft Edge browser. Some important things to note is you must be running Windows 10, depending on the build, but build 1809 or later, or Windows 11 in order to see the latest features and versions. It's important to also note that we recently launched a new feature, which is the device deployment status feature, where you can actually take a look at the configuration status and the DLP policy sync status from your onboarding page. So if you go to your onboarding page, you will be able to see on a granular level the statuses for each of your devices and be able to know if your devices is meeting the configuration requirements and if it has received all the latest policies. Which takes us to our second question. How can I verify if the policy has synced to my device? So if you have created or edited a policy and you want to verify if that policy was deployed to your device, you can now take a look at the status of your policy changes from your onboarding page. If you're not able to do this, or if you want to have a more direct communication, you can contact the support team and follow the steps provided in the blog with the scenario that you're having issues with. So if you already know that a specific policy hasn't been reflected in one of your devices, then you can collect the logs and contact the support team. But a way for you to troubleshoot it yourself is just by going into your device onboarding page and taking a look at the status for configuration and DLP policy sync and making sure everything is updated. In the case that your policy has not been deployed into your device, then the status will say not updated. Something to note here is that after making a policy change, you should give it at least 2 hours for the onboarding dashboard to reflect updated for that specific policy. Since we have a couple of minutes left, I wanted to make sure I reminded everyone that if you have any additional questions regarding Endpoint DLP.
Is there an option to roll back my action in case I applied it wrongly regarding an incident trigger?
I think Shivani or John wanna answer this one.
I guess that depends on the incident, so what type of action you took. So if you, for example, remove an email, or if you unshared a SharePoint folder, there isn't really any way to get back. There will be audits of it in the audit logs. So in theory, what you could do is to reverse it by looking at the audit log event, but there is nothing built in to reverse your action. So it's not something you can do when you take these remediation actions. You need to consider them carefully before applying them.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is, are we able to integrate those incidents on the Azure DevOps tasks work item type as a bug to fix for the team or for tracking? Or will the portal itself handle alone for DLP team?
So we definitely recommend using the portal experience itself for triaging and remediating the alerts. If you do need to use other tools, you can set up this kind of automation through Sentinel. But yeah, we recommend using either the Defender portal or the compliance portal for the triage of these alerts.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is, can we save these filters as a query so that the analysts don't have to apply these every morning when they start triaging?
Yeah, that's a great one. So I believe the filters currently are session-based, so they are saved for that session. We do have it in our backlog to support, these saved filter queries. Advanced hunting, however, does support these saved queries. So we will make sure that the experience for saving, the filters experience is also aligned with how the saved queries in advanced hunting behave.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is, can DLP be configured to send out an encrypted email automatically if an analyst decides to release emails containing sensitive information?
Yes, in that case, what you can do is, as part of that rule, you can also set up like an X header. So the reason I'm saying that you should set up an X header as part of that rule is that allows you to have different MIP labels or OME encryption labels being applied depending on the type of data class you have. So you may have different depending on if it's just classified or highly classified, etc. So you can differentiate in that way. So that's the way I would do it.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is it possible for DLP to provide or to send a notification email of a policy violation and still allow the sender to send out the held email if they choose to do so?
I missed that question. Sorry.
I'll repeat it. Is it possible for DLP to send a notification email of a policy violation and still allow the sender to send out the held email if they choose to do so?
I need to double check that one. I think you can, but I haven't tested it, to be honest. because in theory, what you can do is you should be able to send, you can still make the policy tip show and other things, but I need to double check if you actually can send kind of a violation email as well as part of it. Good question.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how do I see the matching criteria when DLP is triggered on an attachment so I know which field really triggered the alert to see if it was a true positive or a false positive?
So that's something you will see directly. It depends. If it is an attachment, you will see the matching content as we just looked at really quick, but you will see the surrounding characters and the matching content. So when you open up the attachment, you can actually use that view you have in the analyst view to look at the matches you have in the actual content as well as part of attachments. The problem you have with attachments is that you can't render them in line together with the email. So that's why you need to look at that type of overlay where you look at, okay, this is the content that matched. All right, how is it matching in my document?
Great, thank you. The next question is, in alert details, a confidence level is provided. How is that confidence level computed?
The confidence level is really computed by the person creating the sensitive info type. So you as a person can set up your own sensitive information type. And you can say, well, if it matches a regex pattern that is matching credit cards, then that's a 65. And then if you can set up another one where you have the credit cards together with keywords, then you increase the likelihood like 85. I think right now we have changed it to being mean, mid, max, but that's really the same kind of translation. So you set up the confidence level, so if it's highly or medium confidence, and then that's really the score you're then seeing in the UI when you're setting up your own fit.
Great, thanks. The next question is, what happens to the DLP alerts after 60 days? Are they automatically deleted or archived somewhere?
They are being removed. And after 6 months in the Defender, same thing.
Thank you. Next question, how are access rights to different organizations or divisions based on the need to know principle managed?
So
that's something Shivani loves.
We do have a role-based access control that's available now in public preview in the compliance portal. So you're able to assign permissions such as the information protection investigator role, and then add an admin unit. So that's how we're able to specify, say, for example, you need a German investigator versus a US investigator. And you can do this via admin units. So this integration is available already in the compliance portal. Highly recommend to test it out in public preview, and we're looking forward to your feedback. And the admin units allow flexibility to scope based on the geo or the department, or really any other attribute that you would like to, specify your or delegate the permissions in the portal to. And the Defender integration for this similar role-based access control for DLP investigations is on our roadmap. So we are actively working on releasing that as well.
Great, thanks. Next question is, how do I avoid receiving duplicated alerts or incidents?
I'm not sure I fully understand the use of duplicate alerts, but I would highly recommend fine-tuning your DLP policies to ensure that you can reduce the noise and make sure your alerts are firing you can configure rules to become very crisp on when you want to have these DLP incidents fired. So I'm not sure though what duplicate means in this question, but we recommend going back to your policies and configurations to fine tune to reduce the alert, alert volume.
Thank you. Next question is, can DLP cover loading sensitive data to web pages from a line interface?
I need to see that. The line interface. Not fully sure I understand the question.
Okay, well, we'll wait for that person who asked the question to clarify. The next question is, what type of logging is available for changes made to DLP policies, labels, etc.?
All of that logging goes both into activity logging if you're using Splunk or Sentinel or anything else to audit your usage. So it's part of Audit General. It's also available in the universal auditing data. So if you use the standard audit search functionality within the product, you can search for admin modifications and other things to DLP policies and rules.
Great. And then the last question we have is, how are multiple policy breaches handled for a single transmission?
This will depend on the type of system. So if you're talking about Exchange as an example, you can say stop processing more rules, and then it will be stopped for that single rule. If you have SharePoint, it will be different. It will process the rules, and the most restrictive will be applied to SharePoint. Endpoint, we just made that change. I'm not sure if it's in GA yet, but you can make sure that you can also apply the most restrictive rule to endpoints. So you will make sure that you get the most restrictive policy applied to the content, depending on the setting. And it is in this setting, you may have multiple rules and you don't have any stop processing or anything else where you have multiple matches to a single rule. But then, as Shivani said, you need to tune the rule. You can use queries and other things to make sure you understand why you have the overlap in matches and perhaps tune the sensitive info type, but tune the rule itself to perhaps have a different match in between the different rules or policies.
Great. Well, it seems to be all the time we have for questions. So I'd like to thank you, Shivani, John, and Erika, for being our guests today and for an excellent presentation. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped answer questions. At the same time, I would like to remind the listeners that the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements is to visit our landing page at aka.ms/security-community. And while there, you'll find easy ways to navigate and find the resources and learning content relevant to our security products and their communities. A good start would be browsing our bite-sized product videos, ninja trainings, recordings of past webinars, GitHub communities, and more. We love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. Please take a minute submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security-webinar feedback. Thank you and see you next time. Goodbye.